Show a little love to me, baby. Show a little love to me, baby. Show a little love to me, baby.
We were born like Elizabeth Spring Dow, who was born here yesterday. We come into the world, we come from being fully at home and feeling that release that comes. We have a little shadow of it when we come home at the end of the day, those of you that have a home, and put your feet up or relax or have a cup of tea or whatever that is, that feeling of coming home or coming to a safe space or feeling back at peace with one. And when we get separated from that, and that separation, I want to keep reiterating, is created by the mind. That's what the basic issue of the ignorance that is the root of suffering, the Buddha keeps pointing out. The basic root of suffering is thought, the clinging of the mind to things which separate one from all of it. Now, once that separation has occurred, there is incredible pain. We can call it being thrown out of the Garden of Eden, we can call it original sin, whatever you want to call that. I mean, there are different metaphors within different systems. But there is incredible pain. And in some profound way, all of our actions henceforth are an attempt to return to that being, for me, under Maharaja's blanket, or in the heart of God, or in the hand, or being the one, coming back into the one. And we develop a whole set of techniques that we say make us feel good, give us a feeling for the moment of, And some of those give us that moment so intensely, and the rest of our life is so much pain of our separateness and so devoid of that feeling, that once we find one of those things, for example, it might be a moment of sexual orgasm, it might be a moment of surfing when you transcend the dualism between you and nature, it could be when you're doing something like cooking, where you turn into just the joy of the process. It could be any number of things. That when that occurs and it works, it reinforces the behavior, and you start to do that behavior more and more because it feels good. It takes away the pain of the separateness. And the use of drugs, the use of material possessions, the use of relationships, all of it, when you get busy and get obsessed with relationships and wanting to get closer and closer to somebody, it is trying to get to the place where you come back into that oneness. It's that yearning, and you can feel it permeate the universe of people's consciousness. So, when you look at addictions from that point of view, you see that it's not like evil. It is just an attempt to get back. The problem is that most behaviors that get you back, it's like what Maharaja said about drugs. He said it will allow you to be in the presence of Christ, but you can only stay 2 hours. He said it would be better to become Christ than visit him. And that's what you find out with most addictive things, that they give you a short rush, but they don't allow you to remain at home. They just allow you the taste of it. And then the minute you get thrown out because you weren't wearing the wedding garment, the minute you go back to heaven but you can't stay because you didn't come in the right way, you end up feeling like I did something wrong, I'm bad. And then that starts a reaction of mind, so that you come down, then you feel guilt, I must be bad, I should have done something else. Why didn't I do the practices that would have allowed me to stay there rather than the thing that's short term? Because you see your predicament. What happens is that the opportunity for the immediate gratification, it's like what's called in psychology the choice of the little candy bar now or the big candy bar later. And with little children, they'll always grab for the little candy bar now because they want what they can get now. They don't have any delay of gratification. And spiritual practices compared to having sex or compared to taking Coke or something is more like delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. So when you start to stand back and see your predicament and see what you're doing, there is a way from a spiritual perspective in which you begin with that slight bit of awareness to extricate yourself from the chain of reactivity that we're talking about. The chain of reactivity that goes from I'm feeling this hunger, and then I'll go for the gratification, and then the coming down, and then oh shit, and then I should have done it the other way, and then I'm bad, and there's a whole chain of thoughts that go on. Every one of those is just keeping the whole process going. And as you develop the spaciousness, you start to look at where you can intervene in the process of the sequence that goes on. As the awareness gets deeper, you intervene at different places in the sequence. For example, the yearning, the hunger starts. And like for me, for example, I've had strong addictions to food. So that when I am feeling unloved, I'll eat and I'll get fat. It's a pattern. And then I'll hate myself, loathing because of my body and so on. And I'll go through it. Now, I understand the psychodynamics of that at one level, but let's take it from this point of view of the mind. Come on. The first place I began to intervene was when Manindra, my meditation teacher, said, Ramdas, don't you see that it's just old karma running off? And I began to break in at the point that after I had eaten too much to reduce my anxiety because my mother fed me food when I was upset, and I learned that pattern and all that stuff, I start to, instead of going into I'm no good and revulsion and all the sequence, I break the chain at that point, and then I just go back into my spiritual practices. Instead of carrying out that whole sequence, I shortcut there. As the witness gets stronger, you start to go back in the chain further and further until as the separateness is starting to come and the feeling of hunger, and as you're about to eat, you start to notice the fact that you're about to do that, and your mind anticipates the whole sequence, and you, in a sense, begin to see the emptiness of the form you're about to take. Now, if you try to stop it too soon using your mind to stop it, there's a residual backlash from it. So, I hope I'm not condensing. I'm trying to give a lot of teaching very fast. I mean, as I understand it, as I've worked with it, that one develops a lot of patience and a lot of gentleness with oneself. And generally, when people come to me with addictions, I'm inclined to say, start doing spiritual practices. Start doing the studies that will allow you to see yourself in a new way, that will allow you to understand what that hunger is you're feeding in a new way, to just get a little different perspective on it. Don't worry about the addiction. It will fall away when it will fall away. And when you do it again, just notice it. And the line I always use, how poignant I am. How poignant the human condition. Now, I'm so gentle with myself. And what I have watched is the patterns of my obsessions and addictions have changed over time. There's no doubt about it. And yet I didn't deal with them directly head on for the most part. Because what you see is, and this is something that I'm sure I create a lot of waves in many people, including people that I love very dearly, that I'm close to. I see that a lot of the programs to deal with addiction end up creating a new addiction to being not addicted that is as bad as the addiction itself. When you meet somebody that says, I haven't smoked in 3 years, 2 months, 10 days, and 4 hours, you realize that their mind is as stuck as their mind was stuck in smoking. Maybe they won't die of cancer, but they'll probably die of uptightness. I'm being a little facetious, but in general, I'm saying that dealing with things that are, which you're caught in, the minute you start to stop them, you invest them in a way. And so my suggestion is that you just keep cultivating the practices. And every time you don't see, if I get up in the morning and I got up and I decided to stay in the dream state and not get up to do my sitting, that could start a whole sequence of you're no good, you'll never get to God. But in the time I'm saying you're no good, you never get to God, I could have been doing mantra. And when I realized, and I began to sit in meditation and watch the sequence of my behavior, I saw that all my recriminations didn't help anything in particular. They weren't really functional, except trying to make me feel comfortable with myself. And the better thing would be, the minute I notice that I've lost it, or I've gotten caught, or I'm stuck, or I just start to do something. Just pick up a holy book, do a mantra, think of Maharaji, whatever, sing a song. I'll start driving to town, and I'm going to give a lecture, and I start to get uptight. Okay? Oh my God, do I know what I'm going to talk about? And it's a neurotic pattern. I know it from years back. I can give you a whole psychodynamic storyline about what that's about. I look at it, I think, there it is. At that moment, I start Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nija Manu Mukuru Sudari Barano Raghu Bara Bhima Vajasu Jod, and 6 minutes later, I'm in a different space than I was before. Now, you could say from a psychological, that's denial, and you should work with that. But the fact is that thus far, what's happening is it's getting less and less, and I'm able to hang in here now with very little of that old anxiety that used to be crippling. It used to be crippling. I've worked with some of it, but psychologically, but a lot of it is just, it's become uninteresting. It's just become uninteresting. And I just flip gears immediately. I flip gears. Because the minute you get lost in identification with your personality, to the exclusion of identification with your soul, right, that's what's happened. You've lost it. You've lost it. And there are 1,000 times each day you lose it. And if you get caught in your soul to the exclusion of your personality, you lost it equally as much. And that's the balance of us as human beings. Next question.
It's quite a process. I keep asking questions and I get my answer.
Of course, that's all I am, is your own answer.
So I keep rewriting my question. No doubt if I sit with this question, I'll get the answer too. But my most current question is recognition that I feel like I'm in a codependent relationship with God. So what that means to me is that all the way that I know about relationship, about looking outside of myself and efforting and trying to get someone to want me and to love me and respond to me, that the way that I do that in relationship is basically how I see my relationship to God. And I don't feel like the way that my personality is organized right now that I can experience God coming back to me, wanting me and loving me and accepting me. It's just the dynamic that seems to be really strongly operating in me right now. And when I think about how to do that with relationship, I would say that my work is to pull back and to not be so outer focused and to let relationship come to me. But the question I have in relationship to God, it gets a little more nebulous. It's not very concrete. And I'm wondering how to be in relationship with God, and what's God's part? What's His role? What's His responsibility to me to come into relationship?
I think you're demonstrating what you're saying, the way in which psychodynamics are reflected in the way in which we perceive the spiritual journey, and that you're writing the spiritual journey as a large version of what you're dealing with in the psychodynamic in your personality life. And there are a number of ways that appear to deal with what you're talking about. In understanding the dynamics of dualism, the dualistic practice of experiencing her as separate from you, experiencing God as separate. You can project into that which is beyond all forms any form you want. So you can project into it the form of a father, the form of a judge, the form of a rejecter, the form of a non-lover, the form of a caring person, the form of somebody reaching out, the form of somebody who's waiting for you to reach out. These are all projections of the human mind, because God is everything. So you're making of it what you wish. And it's, in a way, you're facing so much that you keep wanting to give it form, and the forms you choose to give it are based on what you need in symbiosis to your own needs and your own separateness. And so you always end up with a self-fulfilling prophecy of proving that you are not worthy and not enough and not, etc. And what I hear in it is the solidity of your identification of yourself with these particular psychodynamics. And so I can hear the way in which the mind is clinging to definitions of self. So in one way, if I were guiding you, I would give you meditation practices to help you extricate yourself from such a strong model of who I am. Because that strong model of who I am only allows you to meet God in a way that is symbiotic or complementary to that particular model. So that's the filter through which you're meeting God. So the question is, do you loosen the filter? That would be one way of doing it. The fact that you are presenting this question the way you are, this is another way I could do it, you see, is to say that the person who's presenting it isn't exactly the same person who's caught in codependency. It's somebody who is noticing the predicament. And what I would like to do is align myself with that part of you. And say that part of you just notices the whole way in which you're doing what you're doing and sits with it and says, look at how I am reducing God to that kind of a partnership. And because I keep reminding us of the statement, God, Guru, and Self are one and the same thing. So in a way, it's as if the outer part of you, your personality, is filled with need The inner part of you is filled with the fulfillment of those needs, but the outer part of you feels that the inner part of you isn't available because that's part of the outer part of you's model, that I'm not good enough to have it. You see your predicament. I mean, you're cutting yourself off from your own inner source. And so I think probably the alternative, another way would be the practices, things like I am that, which is techniques of not feeding the dualistic of God and me, because every time you get near relationships, you slip into your routines about codependency and all that kind of jazz. And it becomes very dramatic. And the other one is to quiet enough to listen to just the truth of your own inner heart and not turn it into a God he or a God she or a God out there. In other words, I'm saying that the dualistic practices may not be optimally productive to you at this stage because of the intensity with which you're holding on to your psychodynamic identity. Okay. And rather a way of emptying and tuning and listening and perhaps relating to nature more rather than people personifications. You know, I think I might suggest to you something like sitting by a stream, for example, for a while. And just sitting with a stream and being tuning to the river and tuning to the wisdom of nature rather than getting into a psychodynamic relationship with that.
Could you give some specific techniques about dealing with greed and strong attachments addiction?
Get what you can.
I've been doing that and it don't work.
Aha!
I'm tired of chasing my own tail.
The issue with all kinds of, it was the same really we were dealing with before, the question of addictions, is to quiet down enough so that you can begin to appreciate the mechanics of the process, so that you can see how it all works. Not necessarily see the source of it. I'm not talking about going back into what it caused it. I'm just saying look at it and see what it is. And see how it's interesting. I will have an addiction, and then as my awareness gets stronger, which I'm cultivating through all my practices, as my awareness gets stronger, I notice that I still will respond to the desire and the pattern, but as I'm in it, instead of later on when I see that it didn't work or it didn't give me what I thought it would give me or something, and the despair and disillusion and that whole sequence, when I'm in it, I begin to feel its emptiness because the part of me is in it, still milking it for all I can, but there's another part of me that I've been cultivating that is just sitting with it saying, lovely, isn't it? Yeah, great, awesome. And I've watched that awareness, as I said before, starting to short-circuit the whole process, getting back earlier and earlier until as that thing which awakens the greed starts in, it starts to thicken my consciousness. It's as if I'm falling out of grace into the desire system. The minute you identify with the desire system, which is really what starts the whole sequence of greed, the minute you identify with the desire, you will feel the finiteness of the game. You've just narrowed it down. You just imprisoned yourself again. Identification with the desire is imprisonment. And yet you have desires. And the question is how you can be involved in life with desires and still not be attached to them. How you can be fully human with all of the stuff without the identification that grabs. What we're talking about is awareness. And awareness, at its freest sense, is this spacious, vast thing that includes everything. The minute it gets caught in a desire, it closes down into, I want that. And that's all you want, is I want that. And then all the rest of it is irrelevant. I want that. I mean, you watch a child, I want that, and if it can't have it, it starts to scream and cry. And a minute later, it doesn't want it anymore. And it's the same with us. I mean, we're doing the same thing. And I've got to the point where I see my desires. If I get them, fine. If I don't get them, fine. It's interesting. If I suffer, it's okay. That's as interesting as getting what I want. And I'm not a masochist about it either. I just begin to see that I have been at the mercy of those desire systems all my life. Are you getting what you need? I mean, and people come up and they say, I'm not getting what I need out of life. And I feel not badly that they're not getting what they need. I'm feeling badly that they're so caught in thinking that they need to get what they need. Because it's one level back. It's that identification with the problem. So that I keep feeling that just keep cultivating the spaciousness of awareness, and then watch how the awareness keeps getting trapped. And you can only do that when there's a little bit of quietness in you that can sort of sit and watch the thing as it's going down. And again and again. And I'm not the traditional kind of teacher which advocates renunciation of keeping away from things. I say go out and be greedy. Just bring mindfulness to it. And that when you watch after a while, see, that's why Maharaji is useful to me. Because Maharaji, as when I talk about my method being Guru Kripa, or grace of the Guru, it means that his consciousness is present with me all the time. If I go into the bathroom and masturbate, he's there saying, interesting. Getting a rush? Is this fun? Are you really having a good time? Yeah. If I do something for the 40th time that is gratifying but is basically an empty work of energy, he's just sitting there just with aso, and with love, total love. He's not judging me, he's not pushing me away. I can do that, but he's not. Having that consciousness around me all the time, and I can feel that when there's an opportunity to have livelihood, that suddenly there's a chance to have more money in the scene. And I can watch that part of me that thinks I could get a little more money. In order to do that, I make another human being an object to get that more money from them, rather than what is a reasonable thing that allows us to stay us, which is called right livelihood. Right livelihood is us money. I mean, you remember that Uncle Henry story? Okay. Tough. How many don't know the Uncle Henry story? Oh, okay. Assuming 10% aligned. Some years ago, we put out a 6-record album called Love, Serve, Remember, with a beautiful brochure of pictures and artwork and a box, and the whole thing was sold mail order for $4.50. And it was really a beautiful production. We put a lot of love and attention into it. It had chanting and questions and answers and meditations, and the third patriarch was in, and the Gospel of John in it and stuff. It was wonderful. I loved it. And my father, who was the president of a railroad at that moment, took a look at it and he says, impressive, pretty good quality. I said, yeah. He said, $4.50, that's pretty cheap. I said, sure is. He says, can you charge more? He says, if you charge $10, will a lot fewer people buy it? I said, no. I said, $4.50 is what it cost us to produce, plus a reasonable return. He says, but if you charge 10, would a lot fewer people buy it? I said, no, probably the same number. He says, well, I don't understand. Are you against capitalism? And I said, no. I tried to think of how I could explain that to him. I said, Dad, you're a lawyer, and you've had a lot of cases, and I know that you take pretty good fees. Damn right I do. I work hard. I said, yeah, you sure do. I said, you remember last year you tried that case for Uncle Henry? Yeah. You worked hard, didn't you? Damn right I worked hard. I said, I bet you charged him a hell of a fee. He said, of course not. It's Uncle Henry. I said, there's my problem. If you show me somebody that isn't Uncle Henry, I'll rip him off. That's the issue of right livelihood. That is the issue of right livelihood. That you charge what is enough so that you can look another human being in the eye as a member of the family and say, that's a fair thing for you to be paying for this thing. And that's finally where you arrive at. And when I see myself not doing that, because the chance of that I make them into an object in order to do that, I watch the horrible beauty of nature unfolding. I see myself doing that, and I'm just quiet watching it, and then I watch the karmic effects of it. And after a while, as I'm starting to do it, it costs too much. It costs too much. There are many people that come up to me and say, I love you so much, can we go to bed together? And the funny line that always comes up in me, not always, but most of the time, is... the funny line that often comes up to me is, we can't afford it. Because the karmic effects of it will be too great. Because the amount of attachment inside of us, the way we're doing it. You hear the issue? Next question. Yeah, exactly. Just be greedy. Yeah.
I had a question, but I got so obsessed with it. And I know that pattern, so I started doing the Qigong. And then I fell into a sleep, and in the dream you came in and told me I didn't need to ask that question.
Right, okay, so I took care of that one, that's great. I knew I couldn't get through 3 groups in the morning. All I have to do is use astral, I cheat a little bit. Great story, great. She's a true addict. See, she's the proof the method works. Thank you. Who's next?
2 years ago, I left a relationship that you might say you performed a divorce here at Lama. And I left the relationship because the man who I was really loved very much was really a sexual addict and couldn't give up being with other women. And I went into my fear of being lonely and alone and have really gone through a tremendous transformation. And during that time, in the last 2 years, my life has become very full and I feel very connected to God, especially through nature. I have a lot of heart connections in my life, but the heart connection I'm yearning for has not manifested. And I have suddenly, in the last few weeks, come face to face with what I'm seeing as my own addiction, which is to connect in a loving way with a man and how I act that out sexually. And I don't know if there's a question in here, but it's more of a very painful dilemma in which I don't know what to do with the fire. And
I'm sure you're not alone in that predicament.
I feel alone in it.
No, you're not. Believe me. If you scratch the surface of those, many people who find the same situation. There's 2 parts to the question is how do we understand intimacy and what do we do with our yearning for intimacy? And the other is what do you do with the energy? Intimacy between 2 human beings has the potential of being one of the most evolved ways of coming into spirit and coming back home. the intimacy that occurs when two people share awareness, when they have transcended the boundaries of separateness for the moment, whether it's through sexuality or through the quality of trust and love that develops until there is this awareness that they both feel they are holding together, they're present in and delighting in separateness, and yet the experience of unity is a very highly treasured quality in the human condition, and it is a path to God. What it is that's being yearned for is the feeling that is the product of the method. That is, what you're yearning for is that feeling of being peaceful, being at home, feeling warm, feeling safe, etc. The method of getting there is the relationship with another person. The relationship with another person isn't the end point. It's the process to get to that state of, that you're not feeling. So often the attachment to the method gets in the way of realizing the real thing about what the method was for, which is to feel that feeling of peace in one's being and at homeness and safety and softness and openness.